This episode of The Rookie Hunter is sponsored by North Arm Knives. North Arm Knives are handcrafted and sold directly through a father and son team right here in British Columbia. Choose from a selection of outdoor knives, kitchen knives, and the brand new folding knife from northarmknives.com. They ship internationally and guarantee all their work. Callie and I use their products and give them our stamp of approval. Go to northarmknives.com. Hey guys, it's been a little while, but we're happy to be back. This is episode 27, and today on the show, we're talking to Cody Rich from the Rich Outdoors podcast. If you're not familiar with this podcast, it's definitely one of our favorites. He's approaching episode 100, which will be up tomorrow. And if you name your favorite hunter, I can almost guarantee that they've been a guest on Cody's show. It's an amazing resource full of great tips and stories, and you name it. It's all there, so do yourself a favor and subscribe to his podcast. So Kelly and I are going to try and blast through a couple of emails. We're going to be calling Cody here in about 15 minutes, which doesn't leave much time, but we'll get through a few of them, and we'll save a few more for the next episode. If you want to reach out to us with show recommendations, if you want to let us know about some beer that we should try, go to our website, therookihunter.com. All of our contact information is there. It's very easy to get in touch with us, and we're always happy to hear from you guys, so don't be shy. Let's get into it. Sit back, relax, crack a cold beer, and enjoy episode 27 with Cody Rich from the Rich Outdoors podcast. Kelly Molnar.
How's it going?
Good, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Since you're inspecting a beer bottle, what's on tap today?
Local brewery. It's the Kettle River Brewing Co. Under the Weather Stout.
I really like this one.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Sometimes not always in the mood for stout. They can be pretty heavy. This one's got all like the flavor of a stout, but it's not like super heavy.
When you're pouring it though, it looks super heavy, and it's got that chocolate milk froth on the top, or hot chocolate. But yeah, as you drink it, it doesn't seem as heavy. It's got a little bit of carbonation in there too.
Sometimes you have a pint of that and you feel like you just ate a huge dinner.
Yeah,
that's really good.
And then I think this is the first time we've actually had a Kelowna beer. I think we've had a couple Penticton ones.
Yeah,
but
lots of stuff from the island. Yeah, and then what do we got for round two?
4 wins. We're going back to the staple. I think this is Phaedra Belgian Rye IPA, and that's Delta BC. And all you ongoing listeners know that we love 4 wins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll probably be cracking that one through the interview here. So Cody Rich from Rich Outdoors podcast is going to be joining us in about 10 minutes here. So it's been a while since Kelly and I hopped on the mics. Last one was an interview with Adam Ford, so we didn't get to do any housekeeping stuff. So we're going to rip through some emails as quickly as we can here in the next 10 minutes. The first one we got was from a guy named Chris. I think he wrote us a while back, actually. He's a new hunter. I guess he's been doing 6 to 7 years, so he's been out there for sure longer than we have. 39 years old. He's wondering about compound bows, which is something that I can't say we're too qualified to talk about. Something we want to include a guest hopefully soon here sometime. But Kelly, you can speak to this a little bit because you bought a bow. I've got the crossbow, which wouldn't be my first choice, but that was it's like handed down to me, so yeah, I'm not going to complain about having that thing. It's deadly.
Yeah, I think with compound bows, so I bought mine a couple years ago, kind of about when we started getting into hunting. I thought that I'd get the bow and get some animals with it. I still have yet to get an animal with it. It's extremely hard hunting with the bow.
For sure.
So keep that in mind. And with that in mind, I suggest getting something like what I did, which was a PSE Stinger. It comes in a package. You buy it from a pro shop that sets you up and it gives you some lessons. Hardcore archery in town here was great. And you get something like that for $500 or $600 and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Once you're practiced up and you have some experience chasing some animals around, then you can decide whether you want to go for a G5 Prime or a Hoyt bow that's going to cost you $1,000 or $2,000, right?
And either way, it's a great hobby for off season anyways.
Yeah. And everybody, I don't know, the whole bow world to me seems like everybody's focused on, like, I want to be 10 feet per second faster.
Right.
I want to be able to pull 90 pounds and all this stuff. And you can kill any animal with like 40 pounds of pull and an arrow and a cheap bow like this, right? Like these cheap bows are 100 times better than half, like all the old bows, right? In my mind.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, we've shot a few times with your crossbow and with my compound, and I was putting 5 arrows right within an inch at 30, 40 yards. So, and that's pulling at about 63 pounds. So the only thing I'd recommend is if you're just getting into this compound bow thing, don't buy a bow that's at 70 pounds and start pulling it right away.
Right.
Try to get something that you can knock it down to 40 and then work yourself back up a couple pounds at a time, because I ended up giving myself like tennis elbow in both of my arms. And I ended up putting it away for about 3 weeks.
Right.
Did some stretches and a little bit of like homegrown physio and push-ups and stuff, and then knocked my bow right down to 40 pounds and then worked myself up to about 65 again.
For sure.
So, and now I can pull that thing all day and just keep shooting. So you got to be smart about that. It's very physically demanding.
Yeah. That's, I tried to pull your bow back last year and I couldn't even do it. I've got, my legs are my, my strength, my upper body's pretty pathetic.
Well, it's interesting because it's about the back muscles, not about your arm muscles. And I think that's like mentally it's hard to get that right. There's for the first little
involved,
bit, right?
Yeah. Sure.
So,
yeah. And I think if you're serious about trying to go out and get an animal in the fall, you should probably start practicing now.
Yeah.
If you're serious about it.
I love everything about bow hunting and compounds.
Yeah.
So.
I love the idea of it and everything, but like, man, it's very difficult. Like, if I could go out with my rifle, because for us, we just want to go out and get meat.
Yeah.
If you and I could get a muley buck each right away, and then felt pretty good, then it might be kind of fun to go out with a bow, knowing that you've already got something. But I just wouldn't want to go a whole season dedicating it to the bow, and I would likely not get anything.
Yeah.
And that would be frustrating as hell for me.
Yeah, the hunting season's only so long, and you only get to go out so many times.
Yeah.
I think Steve Rinello's talked about, like if you're a meat hunter and you're trying to be efficient, then that's why he uses rifle more than half the time, right?
Yeah.
But the thing with bow hunting is I'd like to just take that first couple weeks of September, and really we have no other chance or choice but to hunt elk with a bow in that time, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the prime time for elk hunting anyways. So,
I feel like if we're going to do it, it's going to be elk. It
just
seems like it's easier to get those guys in.
Yeah, and you can call them in. So, I think for bow hunting, for me, it's about the first 2 weeks of September. Yeah. And then as soon as that's over, I'm pretty much back to rifle again.
Exactly.
And then you get a couple weeks at the end of December too, where you can go out with your bow, but depending on what your status is, whether it's a meat.
It was insanely cold when it went back to bow this year, so we just said forget it because our freezers were looking pretty good. So.
And we had an extremely cold winter so far. So December was like minus 25 every day. So
it was minus 16 this morning, man.
Yeah, so we were like, screw it, we're not gonna bother bull hunting in these last couple weeks.
Yeah,
but anyways, kind of
digress.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we had another email from a guy named Rob. He actually sent us a couple with lots of good feedback, which we certainly appreciate hearing that kind of stuff. The second one he sent, I thought would be good to share with everybody. We were talking about shanks, and he was saying just freeze the bone and everything whole, and throw it in the freezer, and then when you're ready to cook it, just cut it with a bandsaw prior to making your ossobuco, and it works great. So yeah, this coming season, that's what we'll do. It makes perfect sense. I don't know why we didn't do that. You just get caught up in trying to get all the work done, right?
I love to, I don't know if it's just an aversion for using the bones and stuff. Maybe. I don't know, but I found like we were pulling all the meat off the front quarters, right?
Yeah.
But I think this season coming up, it'd be nice to make a shoulder roast.
Yeah.
And then take that whole shank and make ossobuco with it or whatever.
Forget trying to take that apart.
Yeah.
That's the worst. I hate doing that, man.
And I had ossobuco in Vancouver recently. It was with lamb, but oh my God, it just like falls apart.
Yeah, and I'm kind of bummed out we didn't keep any of the elk bones. I kind of feel bad saying this, but like there's so much good marrow in there. You can make marrow broth and stuff out of that. That's good for you, man. So each time we get an animal, we're going to be using more and more. Which brings me to his next thing, which was we were talking about tongue on probably the last couple episodes. This being something that we both want to try, and we were just kind of jokingly saying that it's one of those things that for some reason a tongue seems like a gross thing to eat, but for a lot of guys it's one of their favorite parts, and especially when you're in camp to if you get an animal, cut out the tongue and eat that night. So Rob's suggestion was just to boil it, peel the skin off the outside. He said you don't even need to season it, so it's just like roast beef. So tongue next year,
try it
for sure.
Make a pact right now.
And then we were also talking about Canada goose. I think that was with Adam, and I don't know why. I just feel like migratory birds, you just don't know what they've been eating. That's why I've kind of been stayed away from them. Yeah,
well, we see so many in Kelowna with the lake right beside us.
There's
like 2 lakes on both sides, right?
Shit everywhere, yeah.
Yeah,
so, but that doesn't mean you can't eat them. So, worth a try. And he said, stop with anything that can go in a crock pot. I think we've only said that a few times, but it's true. If you're not sure what to do with something, you can throw it in a crock pot, but there's lots of other ways to do things too. So he said the whole goose is good. But if you're not sure somewhere, what is he saying here? Oh, the goose, you just do it like a turkey. Or you could take the breast off, big, meaty, dark colored meat. It tastes great. So yeah, I'm sure it's good.
Sweet.
Cal, it's 5:00 here. Already, we've got a few more emails we wanted to go through, but maybe we should see if Cody's online here. He is. Should we give him a call?
Sure.
All right.
5:00 on the dot.
Yeah.
What's up, guys?
How you doing, man?
Hey, Cody.
Pretty good.
Good.
Are we running video or no?
We're just gonna take audio, unless you want to see our pretty faces.
Oh, come on. I got to see your pretty faces at least once.
Hey, you know what happens is sometimes when we do video, it just seems to drop off. So we should just stick with the audio. But you look good. We can see you.
Yeah, I better not run it, though, because someone else is running a Skype call in the house.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's going to burn up bandwidth.
But hey, the mustache looks great.
Thanks.
Nice.
Just debating on whether to keep it or not.
No.
Keep it.
Keep it.
There
I know.
you go.
Well, it's been like 2 years of just running a stash. I was like, But it's funny because now everyone knows me as the guy with a stash.
Right.
Yeah. I usually run the beard, but Movember is when I bust the stash out.
Yeah.
I ended up looking like Pena from Narcos.
Mine started, I had a big beard in Super Bowl year before last. I was going to shave it off, just got tired of it. It got so big. And I shaved everything but the mustache. And I was like, that's kind of funny. I should rock that for the Super Bowl party tomorrow. And 2 years later, still have it.
Still there.
Nice. You made another Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Nice. I heard a beer crack.
What's up, guys?
What do you got? What do you got going on?
So actually, I went to the store and I was gonna find a new one. So this is Gilgamesh Brewing, which is like super local. Like it's so I live outside of Salem, Oregon.
Okay.
So most of the breweries are like Bend or Portland, and this one's out of Salem. So it's Gilgamesh Brewing, and it's Oedipus IPA.
Nice.
It's pretty good.
Not bad?
Not bad at all, man.
Good.
Pretty good.
Good.
Awesome.
All right, man. Well, I think with your podcast, you're obviously focused in on your guests. So we've listened to a lot of your podcast and really enjoy it. But there's not a whole lot of background behind Cody Rich. So if you don't mind, just give us a bit of your background and how you got into hunting.
Yeah, and it's funny because I guess it depends on when you guys launch this, but everyone asks me that, like no one knows anything about me,
Right.
and so for the 100th episode that's coming up, we're gonna do a reverse. So it's like the pre 100th episode, interview of Cody. So it'd be fun.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, I think I probably came out of the womb hunting. Like I don't even remember when I started. I just have always done it. My mom says when I was about 2, my brother and I could start going kind of walking along on deer hunts and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then kind of like 4 was, definitely all the time. But so my brother and I, man, we hunted from the get-go, but we could never elk hunt until we were in 4th grade. So I was 9, I think, when I got to go on my first elk hunt. And that was like the big hunt that you got to go on. Cause like you deer hunted around the house and stuff, but to go on the elk hunt was like a week-long trip. You got out of school. And so, that's the one you really look forward to. So, So yeah, that's when I started super early. And I remember my first elk hunt was this. I mean, I still have pictures of it and stuff, like being a little flannel. And I was like, the moment all your skills, every step was like you tried to be as quiet as you possibly could because you're like, man, I'm on the elk hunt.
Nice. I just posted a photo on Instagram. I think it's the last one we put up there, and it's a field full of elk, and that's actually in southern Oregon, and that's like the biggest herd of elk I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, and that's the nice thing about Oregon is like the opportunity, and we've talked about this before. Like guys from Oregon are really good hunters because they get to do it every year.
Right.
Like it's virtually over the counter. I mean, it is over the counter, and we have elk in our backyard,
Right.
And so you get to hunt for 30 days, around the house and stuff, with a bow, and so you get so much opportunity to hunt elk and like it's funny to me to look at like guys in Arizona or British Columbia or something, like you just don't have the number of elk, or you don't get the opportunity nearly as much. Now,
Right.
Oregon doesn't have nearly the elk that other places do, but as far as being able to learn and kind of get better at it or grow your skills, it's definitely a great place because you can hunt elk every year.
Yeah. And in BC, if you want to do that, you kind of got to be more on the southeast areas.
Yeah. So, I mean, see, this is naturally my podcast self wants to ask questions. I'm so inquisitive. But so like, what's the elk like up there? I mean, I know there's elk up there and that's literally about all I know. So like, how does it work? And what's kind of the normal areas, or like what's the population densities and things like that?
Well, I don't know if I could go into that specifics of it, but your main elk regions would probably be like southeastern BC, like Kootenays, going out into Flathead.
Yeah.
There's a little bit in the Okanagan region where we are. So this is still pretty southern BC. And then you can go over to Vancouver Island in Vancouver area, and there's Roosevelt elk over there.
Yep.
But I don't know if there's huge numbers.
So how hard is it to get a tag? I mean, even for a local like you guys, you guys were in the Kootenays when you got yours this year, right?
That's right.
Yeah, we were. So for us, it's $25 over the counter, but it has to be a 6-point bull, and you only get one a year.
So what's like the success rate then? Like, is there like a lot of guys killing elk, or is it pretty low success rate?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys, but you have to be in the right spots, right? And a lot of those guys that live out there, I had my father-in-law on the show a couple episodes ago. He's the kind of guy that, they go in their archery spot and they're usually successful every year.
Yeah, I think it's the guys who've been doing it for a long time that know where to go. And Kelly and I have seen quite a few elk in the Okanagan, but the numbers are pretty low. And typically what we see is a lot of cows, not a lot of bulls running around. So
Yeah.
it's definitely trickier, and it's not something we typically focus on in the Okanagan. It's more so our mule deer and whitetail that are pretty prevalent around here.
Yeah, we would head over to the east again if we were going to go for elk.
Yeah, exactly.
So even your guys' like rifle tag is over the counter then, huh?
That's
Yep.
right. Yep.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, yeah, you got to shoot a 6-point, but it's still, at least you get a hunt.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
sure. And
Yep.
there's
You guys get to hunt everything. This is crazy. You guys get sheep tags and
Yeah.
goat tags.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
That
pretty
was one of
spoiled,
the, like with this podcast too, right? It's, we thought we're in an area where we, like you said, in Oregon, you get the opportunity to hunt. In BC, we get the opportunity to hunt a lot of different animals. So it's, I think it's a good place to do a podcast, and we get to have some experiences, mountain goat, and we're going to try for mountain goat this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, you guys don't understand like how jealous I am. Like mountain goat's like something you dream of, and like just getting to chase something in its natural habitat that's so extreme, like where mountain goats live. And I think I watch so many mountain goats where I elk hunt and stuff. It's like you just want that day, someday when you get a chance to chase them, and then you guys just get to do it over the counter. No big deal.
That last elk hunt was actually a mountain goat hunt.
Yeah, that it
But we couldn't
turned
find
into
any goat in the.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The basically what happened was like when we got to where we were going, the weather turned on us and the snow came rolling in, and pretty much put a stop to that hunt. And then we ended up just looking for deer and elk. So things changed quickly on that one. But
Yeah,
next year we'll go back.
A lot of luck involved too.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's pretty much hunting, man. I mean, it's a majority of it is luck.
Well, for
I'd rather
sure.
be lucky than good when it comes to hunting.
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
To be able to go on a goat hunt and then default and kill the bull that you guys killed. It's not a bad second option.
Oh no.
Yeah, no kidding. What species are you kind of into mainly? If you had to pick a couple of favorites.
I'm completely obsessed with elk.
Yeah.
That's definitely the top species. Just growing up, like it's probably has something to do with like growing up and always wanting to go elk hunting. And then I don't know, my cousins. So I had a lot of older cousins that were kind of my mentors when it came to bow hunting. I started shooting archery pretty young. I think I was like 9, and I shot a lot, but my dad didn't want me to bow hunt. He thought it was crazy that all my cousins would bow hunt elk and rifle hunt deer. To him, that was like the goofiest thing ever. Why wouldn't you bow hunt for deer? Because he just didn't believe in a bow and arrow, just super old school.
Right.
And so didn't let me bow hunt. And so then my cousins kind of got me into it later in life. And they were all 5 to 10 years older than me. And so they were obsessed with chasing bulls. And so I kind of got, I'm sure reluctantly they drug me along, but I got to go with them and chase bulls. And it's funny because I look back and we were really successful considering. I mean, we didn't have a clue what we were doing. We had these old Barry's bugles and we'd run around in the woods and bugle, but man, we got in so many encounters growing up. Just literally would chase bulls all the time, but could hardly ever make it happen because we were terrible. But so that's, I think, what fed my obsession with elk, and then it's never really slowed down from there. I would love to have 3 elk tags a year, and if anything else was gonna get taken off the plate, it'd be okay with me. But like the 3 elk tags a year is like my obsession. So, but then like my dream species, I think I still would like to chase all the sheep. And I think that boils more down to adventure than anything, just where they are. And that's the same with goat. I'm like obsessed with goats because I've watched them for so many years and not been able to hunt them.
Right.
That it's like, man, someday I would love to be able to actually chase that animal. And just where they live is so impressive to me, and what it takes to do that hunt and then to get that meat out and just the extreme terrain that it involves.
Definitely,
I think that's
yeah.
And if you pick your
obsessed with
spots right in BC, there are over-the-counter tags for goat.
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, yeah,
And
maybe
they're really not that hard. I mean, if I like wanted to, I could go do it. I don't know. Like you could draw a Kodiak tag fairly easily. Then you got to pay a guide, and it's like, I don't know. I kind of always, I keep saying I'm going to do it one of these years, and I should just get it done with. But I think, a lot of times with hunting, it's like thinking about someday I'm going to do this hunt is probably better than doing the hunt. Like for me to like dream about going on a goat hunt someday, like if I actually go on a goat hunt and kill a goat, I'm sure it'll be anticlimactic to the fact that me just like dreaming about it for years. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I agree. It's that whole, and that's the whole thing about planning right now, right?
Yeah.
Like it's January, February, and some of this planning stage is even funner than the hunt sometimes. We're already talking about this.
Yeah,
year.
for sure. Well, the way I visualized our mountain goat hunt, obviously it turned out a whole lot different, but you have this certain image in your mind of how it's going to go down, and that's never usually what happens. So
No.
Oh no.
yeah.
And it's funny because like I was thinking about that last year, like all the crazy stuff that happens during elk seasons and things. You're like, right before elk season, I get like these butterflies. Like, man, what's gonna happen this year? Like, what crazy thing is gonna happen? Like it's just crazy. Like every year, something so extreme that you never could have predicted happens, and it's like just that anticipation of, man, what's gonna happen this year? Like, hopefully, it's like at least slightly good and not all bad. But I think the anticipation of hunting season is something I really look forward to.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
So how about you guys? I got to flip this. I'm always asking questions. But like, I love your guys' podcast because it's so awesome to see it from the eyes of a new hunter. And one thing that when I started my podcast, I took for granted is like there's so many things that were just normal to me growing up hunting since I was 2, 3, 4. It's fun to watch or listen to your guys' podcast and think about how you guys think about things. You're like, oh, I never really would have thought that was an issue or this or that, the other thing. And so I'm always curious, like, what's your guys' take on it? Like coming into it later in life, how, what were some of the things that you were like, wow, this is amazing, or wow, this is way harder than I thought, those type of things.
Oh man, it's whenever I'm explaining this to guys that that are asking me about hunting who don't hunt, it's so hard to kind of sum it up and into why it's like such an amazing thing. And it's like, I think for Kelly and I, it's really been life-changing in a lot of ways. But I think the coolest thing for us is always just like, it's the experiences that you get from hunting. It doesn't really matter if you're successful or not. It's just kind of getting out there and seeing amazing things and getting exercise and fresh air and exploring new areas. So I think for
hanging
us,
out.
Yeah, and then just, hanging out with your buddies, and you make it a priority to do trips together and, see guys that you haven't seen. Maybe you only see them once a year to go out for a hunting trip. So I think for us, that's sort of the best part of it. And then obviously the meat is, the reward at the end of it, hopefully. So...
Yeah, it's funny because you see so many guys that try to define it like, oh, I'm getting organic meat, which is great and it's true. But like you said, when you're a hunter, you can't really put it into words.
No, it's hard.
It's so much bigger than that. And it's easy to use that as like as a staple to explain it to someone, to say, well, this is why you should get into it. Because you can't really explain those emotions like, hey, you should get into this because it'll change your life and how you look at life.
Yeah.
But so if you guys had buddies, or I'm sure you have buddies that, you were friends with before you started hunting, like what do you tell them? Like, hey, you should get into hunting, or do you not push it? Or do you say, hey, just try it out? Or, what's your guys' approach to getting a non-hunter into hunting?
But don't really push it, but you can tell, guys that start asking you about it more and more. They'll ask one question, which leads to another question. And the next time you meet up, they're talking about hunting again. So it's like, if this is something you're interested in, then go get your license and we'll take you out there, right? And the only way to really, figure out if it's something that you like is to go out and experience it. There's no other way, because, you might think it's something you want to do and you kill a deer and you hate it and you never want to go out and do it again. But for other guys, they'll be locked in for life, I think. So you really just got to get out there and try it out.
Yeah, and I think for us, like we had a lot of other interests earlier on in life, like music, and we played in bands for a long time, so there wasn't a lot of room. But when we were out, like, I don't know, we mountain biked all the time and hiked, and everything we did activity-wise that wasn't music was always outdoors, camping. Your dad had a place up in the Caribou region. So like that stuff was always... I don't know, it was almost like we were missing something for the first 30 years. And then once we started hunting, it just clicked. And we were like, wow, this is what we were supposed to be doing this whole time. That's why we like the outdoors so much.
And now we're completely obsessed, as you can tell.
Yeah. So it's good. Yeah. Now the
it's a good obsession. I don't know if it's like the most cost effective obsession, but it's
No.
it's a good one.
I was just gonna say that it hits the wallet, but I think you start bringing elk meat home like that.
Yeah.
It starts. I can't even remember the last time I bought meat.
Yeah, me neither.
So
Yeah.
it does pay back a little bit, but it's not a cheap hobby.
No, and I think like that's the one thing. Like I think so many people try to like justify it that way. And like I 100% take that off the table. Like
Yeah.
and it's been easy to do because I've been at least successful enough to like fill the freezer. And there was last year I didn't get an elk, and it was like, oh wait, this is it kind of sucks when you don't have meat. And so, but I really do try to take that off the table because I don't want to go into elk hunts with that like in the back of your head that you have to fill the freezer.
Right.
Yeah, the pressure.
And like to each his own. Like if you want to fill freezers, that's great. And like I want to fill freezers too. I think I'm just very quest driven or goal oriented to like find the biggest elk in an area, and it'd be very easy, not very easy, but it would be doable for me to, to kill a raghorn or a small six every year and fill the freezer. But, you'd almost get burnt out on that. And,
Right.
like that quest is what keeps you pushing harder and harder and becoming better and trying to improve, your skills as an archer, your skills, in the woods and your woodsmanship and, the technical aspects of your equipment. Like that's what drives you to get better and better, because you wouldn't push that hard if you only needed to kill a cow every year.
Yeah.
And there's nothing against that, but it just wouldn't push you to be better,
Yeah, the people that have a desire to keep learning, I think end up being the best hunters, right?
Yeah.
Like you gotta love.
They also eat a lot of tag soup though.
Yeah. True.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, the whole, I don't know. There's so much to learn every single time. We've talked about this before. You learn something every time, whether you know it or not. It's all just kind of getting mashed into your brain. So you got to spend time out there, but there's also a bunch of resources out there too. Like it's not like back when our grandparents were out and they had to, maybe they had a book, or maybe they just had family that brought them out. But nowadays, for a rookie hunter, you can go online and we listen to your podcast and we listen to a bunch of others out there, and you kind of get a head start.
Yeah, definitely.
So
What did you guys do before podcast? Because everyone asked me, I was on another podcast, and they're like, what's the best way to get into hunting? And I was like, man, podcast. But then I was trying to think, like when I was a kid, my mom was a dental hygienist, so they had magazines at their office, and so I got all the old magazines, and like I was super nerd. I read every single hunting magazine, had them like cataloged on my shelf with like articles and like
Nice.
the ones I liked and stuff. Like it's super nerded out, but. Like I feel like hunting magazines are kind of like falling by the wayside, or they're very paper thin with their information, whereas podcasts are very deep. How did you guys learn? What was your resources?
I think Meat Eater is a good way to kind of get into it when you see Ronaldo going out there.
Yeah. Well,
with his show, and then also his books and stuff like that have also been a pretty good resource for us.
yeah. I mean, it's only been 2 or 3 years for us. So, we had the podcast and the YouTube and Meat Eater and all that kind of stuff to help us right from the get-go.
Yeah, Solo Hunter's another good one, I think, for guys
Yeah.
to get a feel for what it's like out there. But I think podcasts, I think you're right, are kind of the best way to really hear from guys in long form, what their experiences are and what they're doing to find success and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
I mean, that's why I do it. I still do it, and I learn, all the time, and I love picking people's brains.
Yeah, that's exactly why Kelly and I do it too, because we knew it would force us to learn, right? When you're coming on here, you kind of have a duty to spread information that's correct. So when you bring in a topic to the table, there's quite a bit of research that has to go into it beforehand, which benefits us as hunters and obviously people who listen to it as well, hopefully. So.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
And the guests that you have on your show are, super helpful, right? Like even the food related ones. I remember listening to Tiffany Haugen. She gave me so many tips. Yeah. Coconut milk in the slow cooker and like all these things. It's like, oh man. That's not rocket science, but even smoking fish. she mentioned a couple things about just a simple brine, and why make it complicated, right? And then once you have that foundation, then throw in a bunch of your own stuff. So yeah.
I feel like I need to go back and listen to all my own podcasts again too.
I've gone back and just checked out a few of ours, and yeah, it's interesting listening back to some of those old ones, because even over a short period of, I think we started this thing like 9 months ago or something like that. Mm-hmm. We've already learned so much, and our opinions have already evolved so much in that short period of time. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah,
but that's what's great about your guys' podcast though, is I love watching you guys learn. I can just like see it ticking and like, okay. And it's like, it's just so great to like watch your guys' thought process and like how you think about things, which is very different than like someone who's been doing it forever, you know? It's like,
oh, for sure.
It's kind of cool.
It's interesting for us too.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
It's almost like a little archive that we can look back at in 20 years. Laugh at.
Just think your kids are gonna listen to your like entire playlist of podcasts.
Scary thought. So other than just like having the opportunity to talk to like the guest you've had on your podcast, Cody, is pretty amazing. But other than, having that as a resource for yourself to kind of learn more, what else inspired you to start the podcast?
So the whole podcast started, like I listened to podcasts. One of my friends, she's like, "Hey, have you heard of this podcast?" And I was like, "I've never even heard of a podcast." I'm like, "What is a podcast?" This is like 2006.
We still hear that today, yeah.
Yeah, and it still happens today, but this was 10 years ago. And she's like, "You got to check out this podcast." So I was like, "Oh," and then I binge listened. I went nuts on podcasts because I was driving like all the time.
Right.
And so then I was listening to all kinds of podcasts. Never even crossed my mind that there wasn't a hunting podcast. And I remember one day I was on the mountain and chasing this bull that I've chased for years, and got so close and still couldn't get it done. And I was like, gosh, like I really wish I could just sit down and listen like to Dan Evans and figure out how the heck he does this. Like, how do you chase big bulls? Like, I just want to ask these questions, And I was like, I wonder if there's a podcast. And I was like, oh, I should start a podcast. And I can just ask people all these questions. And 2 weeks later, I started a podcast.
Nice. Just like that, eh?
Yeah, literally, I was like, I'll do a hunting podcast. And, I'm kind of like all or nothing. So it was all in. And 2 weeks later, I launched. I had 3 episodes ready to go.
Nice.
I went from there every week. I've missed a couple weeks and here and there, but I try pretty hard to get it every single week. And that was kind of in the beginning. It was like, I knew it was going to be tough, but I literally in my intro said, hey, every Thursday morning, because I wanted to hold myself to the grindstone,
right,
and make myself put it out every week, because I didn't want to have any excuses or anything like that.
Right.
Now, people have called me out before that it's not every Thursday, but for the most part, I try to, like really hard to like get it out every Thursday. And sometimes many times it's like up till 2 a.m. on Wednesday, knocking it out and like done, got it out.
Nice.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're level is almost hitting every Thursday, I think you deserve to miss a couple. That's a big commitment, man.
For sure.
You guys need to do it once a week.
Maybe we'll get to that point. We talked about having a schedule and like, fuck it, let's just put them up when we get a chance to do it, because it's just Kelly and I have like conflicting schedules and all that, but hopefully we'll get to a point where this thing becomes consistent enough and we can line up enough guests that we can do it every week and that. But
we're trying every couple weeks. That's kind of the goal.
I think we only put up one last month, but oh well.
Well, January is a little tough, but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, last January, like I think I skipped the entire month. It's very tough in like show season, because the last couple of weeks have been home 2 days a week. Literally, like I got home Sunday night, and now tomorrow I go to the Portland show. So I was only home Monday, Tuesday again. So it's like, man, just so busy, so hard in January, February.
That's a big thing in the States with the shows and stuff like that. So is there just a big circuit that you guys kind of cruise around on, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's just there's a lot of shows going on. You guys got to come down. Like,
we should.
It's a lot of fun. You meet so many people that you like. For me, it was like meeting a ton of people that were guests, meeting a ton of listeners.
Right.
Like, I don't know. So I've kind of always been at SHOT Show and things. So this year, last year, and it was like, you have ATA show, you have SHOT Show, you have SCI show, and then you have like the smaller shows, which is the one in Portland this weekend, and then you have Western Hunt Expo in Salt Lake, and it's just, they're just conventions, trade shows, and
right.
You get to meet so many people, and it's a great way to meet people that listen to the show, meet people that have been on the show.
Right.
I'm sure you'd see a lot of your guests there and things like that.
For sure. Yeah, something
It's pretty cool.
we should do. We don't really have those. Well, there are those types of events up here, but not with the same, power that you guys get down there, and the type of people that you have access to. So I think for us to come down would be pretty cool. Actually, a great way to meet some of these folks.
Where was SHOT Show this year?
Vegas.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Hey,
See,
I think we should make a commitment.
That one's so busy. It's kind of tough.
Oh, okay.
SCI is very like an international show, but it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of my Canadian friends are at that one. I think Western Hunt Expo is kind of like probably a good one to start.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool show, and it's very, very much, elk, deer, and some sheep too. So elk and deer based, Western hunting type show, but that one's a lot of fun as well.
And where's that one?
And Salt Lake.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think Mike and I eventually will have to make a commitment and go down check one of those out, eh?
Maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
Yeah.
And
this year, come on, it's only a week away.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hold on, I gotta look at my calendar.
Oh, so you're coming up on episode 100? Did you say?
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
So I don't know when this is going to publish, but it'll be, the next one's coming out, episode 100.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe it already. It just flew by.
Yeah, that's wild, man. So like I said, the list of guests you have is insane. Is there any, interviews or tips or anything that have really stood out and helped you as a hunter? I'm sure there's lots, but is there kind of a few that stand out above the rest?
Man, that's a tough question. And it was funny because there's a lot of them that were really like just idols, and so just being able to get to do the interview,
right?
I was like a little girl, schoolgirl, because like doing the Wayne Carlton one, like I literally grew up and we didn't have hunting. We didn't even have TV hardly. We had like 4 channels. And so I had this Wayne Carlton bow hunting video, and it was like half elk and half white-tailed deer. And I don't know, I probably watched it at least 100 times because, like you just watched the same video over and over. You didn't have like hunting videos. So I had these Wayne Carlton hunting video memorized from my entire childhood. It's the only hunting video I ever had. And so like to be able to really sit down and talk with Wayne Carlton was like, wow, this is amazing.
Nice.
And whether you pick up any tips from it or not, and it was just kind of like, that point where you meet one of your idols is
just the experience alone is enough.
Just the experience alone. But there's been a lot of great tips, and there's so many. Just talking to Jason Carter was like huge. Like he's another one of those guys that's just amazing, absolutely crushes it in the mountains. And so just like so many great tips along the way. But I keep saying like I need to like write a book of all like the top guests and their tips or whatnot.
For sure.
Yeah, Steve Eklund was another one. That guy, he's awesome. But so much inspiration, I think, is like drives me to be better, and push harder.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's easy to when you're not even listening to the podcast every week to just forget about hunting for 6-8 months, even, and just kind of go about your life. And then, a lot of guys get into hunting in June, as they get ready for season. But with podcasts being around, it's so easy just to kind of have it in the back of your mind, or the front of your mind, I should say, all year long. And so now you're thinking about it all the time. So you're doing a lot more research and you're planning more and all these other things, versus before it was kind of like, last minute planning. At least for me, that's how it was, because we're just so busy with other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I think you had Fred Eichler on at one point?
Yeah.
He's taken almost every animal in North America with a recurve.
Yeah,
that's pretty crazy. Cool listening to. Those guys are so committed, right?
Yeah.
I remember I had this poster of Chuck Adams. I need to get him on the podcast too. But I had this poster of Chuck Adams, and that was like the first time I really found out that like the North American Slam was a thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he had just got his slam or what it was, but I remember I had this poster and I put it up in my room, and I don't know, I was a kid, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. And I was like, that was the coolest thing ever. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a thing, And now it's like, there's a lot of politics involved in that. And I look at that like it was something I wanted for a long time. I was like, oh man, I'm going to do that, as a kid. And then you get older and like, I don't know if that's like my number one thing. It feels very much like species seeking, and I'm not like super into species seeking or going out. And like, I don't know if I really have a desire to shoot a polar bear. There's just so many things that go along with it. But at the time I was like, oh my God, you just blew your world, like I didn't know this was possible. And so it's always cool to be able to talk to those kind of people that have been out there and done that, those big accomplishments. And I have a lot of respect for anyone who has big dreams and goes out and chases those dreams, like for even Fred Eichler, like he wasn't necessarily rich and famous before or is today, but for him to be like, hey, this is what I want, and then to make it happen, like that's impressive to me at any level, really. So what about you guys? You guys what's your like hunting goals or hunting dreams?
Well, I don't know, man. We're sort of just taking it one step at a time. Like, I know for me, a moose is kind of a big one. Mountain goat is another one for sure. And as great as BC is, I want to incorporate some travel as well outside of British Columbia. But I think much like you said, it's a lot about the adventure and going to different places and pushing yourself to, do things you didn't think were possible and get into these backcountry areas that are, so far away from everything else.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have the opportunity to hunt stone sheep up in northern BC. And I think that's kind of like, that's the pinnacle for me. I think it's been a little bit off our radar so far because we're just trying to get our feet planted, right? Like get some deer, get some elk, try to get a moose. Yeah. But once maybe we get all that stuff, we take a trip up to northern BC or up to the Yukon area and try some stone sheep.
Yeah.
And I think that's good advice too, because so many guys, not to interrupt, but so many guys, they want to kill the biggest bull right out of the gate, or whatever it is, biggest buck, biggest bull, biggest whatever. But you don't learn as much that way versus like trying to just get your feet under you and learn by doing, if you're hunting forked horns every year, you're going to learn more than trying to hunt only 200-inch bucks, because trying to hunt 200-inch bucks means you might see one and that's about it. And you don't learn a lot that way. You learn a lot by making these stocks and failing and so there's so much to learn along the way to get to stone sheep. There's a lot of logistics involved and just learning how that works, like by doing, say, a goat hunt, which is still awesome. But you learn how those logistics work. You learn how to, set up camp, how to deal with really, really crappy weather if it comes into play. And so there's like so many things you learn along the way by doing what you guys are doing and kind of just working up to that. And I think a lot of people would just say, oh, I can hunt stone sheep, I'm going to go do that.
Yeah, I think if a shot presents itself, you want to have the confidence to know that, if it's your one chance to get a stone sheep or your one chance to get a 200-inch mule deer, like you don't want to have that be your first, second shot on an animal, right? I think every hunter's had some experiences where the shot didn't really go exactly as planned, but we find the more time we spend in doing this and practicing and getting some animals in the freezer, whether they're just spikes or whatever, when that big one comes along, you're in a much better position to take it down, right?
Yeah. The way that things worked out for Kelly and I think I'm kind of grateful the way that it went, because like our first season, we didn't get anything, and it was kind of frustrating because we spent a lot of time out there and, we didn't come home with anything, but that pushes you a lot harder. We've heard stories of guys who go out and have a really successful first season and they feel like, well, this is easy, there's nothing to it. But for Kelly and I, it was like mentally and physically very challenging. So it just pushed us even harder. And then in our second season, then that's what we got our doe. And then so it's kind of been one small step leading up towards our last season here in 2016, where things really start to pay it off. All the things, we've learned kind of came into play and resulted in successful hunts. So it's, I think we're just lucky that it didn't all happen right away, and it's kind of slowly taken one step at a time.
Yeah, it's funny because my sister of all people who did not hunt when we were growing up, my brother and I were diehard hunters, and my sister was like save all the animals. Like she would scare a deer away if it ever came close. But she got into hunting late in life, and so I took her hunting. This was it was a couple years ago now, and she's been begging me, and I was like, no, it's not gonna happen. Like I'm not taking you hunting. Like this is my time. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And so finally, this is like 2 years into begging me to take her bow hunting for elk, and I was like, all right, you can come along. And she but it was like, I'm not, if it happens, it happens, but I'm going to put you on this water hole, and that's what you're doing. I'm like, not hunting for you, which sounds terrible, but you're like, I honestly thought it was a fad. I'm like, you're not going to be into hunting a year from now. So like, what's the point of me wasting an entire year trying to get you an animal? And
right.
So, I'm a mean younger brother. Sorry. But, so anyway, like I'd chase bulls, and she'd been around when I was chasing bulls, and this bull's bugling, and I was like, all right, I'll let her chase this one. It sounds pretty small. I was just walking back to camp at night and heard this bull over the hill. So I'm like, I'll let her, we'll try to call it in for her. Like it'll be a good bull for her. And needless to say, like we went up there the next morning, and I can't find this bull, and ended up finding him. It was chaos. I'm chasing him through the woods, and we're screaming back and forth. And he definitely sounded a lot bigger the next morning. And sure enough, he came through the trees, just snapping, breaking everything. And it was very, very, very rushed. Not the ideal situation for a first-time hunter at all whatsoever. It was like bull's running at us, and we're running at him. Sit down right here. He's going to come from there. And 3 seconds later, this bull pops out and just screaming. And I'm pretty sure she forgot how to use her bow and arrow and missed this bull at 18 yards. And broadside, 18 yards, standing there screaming. Wow. And I just laughed, and she was so upset, so mad. And I just laughed. I'm like, trust me, it's so much better this way. Right. Because now you're obsessed for life. Like if you killed that bull, it'd been great, but you wouldn't have earned it. Yeah. She was so mad at me. She was so mad at herself.
She didn't want to hear it.
Yeah. And like now it's like she's hooked. Like she loves bow hunting. Probably because she missed that elk at 18 yards. Right. And so like that's what really hooks you. And it's funny you say like your successes. And I do see a lot of people though that they don't find success early enough, and they just screw it, I'm not into it, because you do lose interest. I mean, look how much work you guys put into it, and then nothing.
For sure. Yeah, I guess there's a middle ground. You can get discouraged if it goes on for too long. If you're 3 seasons in and you've spent a whole bunch of time out there, and it makes sense. But with your sister, what do you think the change was from going from somebody who was sort of against hunting to getting interested in it?
Well, she shot her first elk. So we have some property and stuff, and so she kind of had a tag, and her husband hunts, and so she had a tag for the property, and this tag is pretty extended season. It's down in the valley, and so like it's either they're there or they're not on the property. And needless to say, the elk were down there one day, and so it was like it was not a hard hunt at all. It was kind of like walk around the end of the shop and shoot one out of the field, but it was kind of like that second was like, oh my God, that was so amazing. I got to do this for real now. Wow. And so, that was kind of her hooking point. And from there, she's been pretty diehard, pretty into it, and, got into bow hunting and shoots her bow all the time. And so she was hooked for sure.
Nice. That's good.
Yeah. I think that's the experience. We were just talking about this before you came on the line, but the bow hunting experience for elk in early September. That's something that Mike and I haven't experienced yet, but calling something in to about 20 yards and have it screaming in front of you, that's
intense, man.
That's something we want to experience in the next year or two.
That's like hands down what drives me more than anything. I love rifle hunting and whatnot, but bow hunting, that's me time. That's what I do. Like that's what I live for. The rest is just kind of like the fill time, and but that September month is, my goal in life is to be able to hunt every day of September, not have to worry about anything but just hunting in September. That would be like the ultimate, just be able to bow hunt the entire month.
Mm-hmm. So do you do most of this hunting in Oregon, or do you go to Idaho and Nevada, and are you traveling quite a bit, or?
Yeah, I travel quite a bit. I mean, at this point pretty steadily Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. And then anything else would be a bonus. I've been to New Mexico, been to Nevada, been to Wyoming, California. So it's wherever you can. I mean, Washington even. So it's kind of like whatever you can fill your dates with. But essentially a lot of Oregon, Idaho, Montana. It's kind of my three go-tos.
So when you're dealing with other states, you guys have like a points system for applying for tags. Is that right?
Correct.
So how exactly does that work? Because here it's a bit of a different setup. It's basically just a lottery, and you apply, and sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. There's no point system as far as I'm aware. I'm not sure if any other provinces have a point system, but
for some of the species.
Yeah.
You know, when I tell people like super new to it, it's because there's bonus points, there's preference points, and there's a lot that goes into it. You know, when I first got started, and I remember when I first started hunting out of state, I started doing all this research, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. I think the easiest thing to do is to kind of pick one state that you can hunt over the counter. Say Idaho. You know, Idaho, I mean, you can put in for Idaho as well. But instead of looking like, how do I put in for every state at once? Maybe how do I put in for Idaho? And that way, you know, because in order to put in for these states, you have to buy a license.
Right.
And that gets expensive when you're buying 5 or 6 licenses or even more. And so a lot of the states, when I first started putting in, it was kind of like, well, I'm going to go to Idaho, so I'm going to buy a hunting license anyway, so I might as well put in for it. So then it was like I learned that one. And so then the same with Montana is kind of like you have to buy a license to put in. And so it was like one state at a time. Now, there's so many people will be like, oh, you just have to be putting in for every state in the West if you want to draw. Yes and no. Like to me, it's like, man, you just to be able to hunt is pretty awesome. And there's a lot of places you can do that without having to buy $2,000 worth of licenses in every state and go from there. You know, and it's just, I think it overwhelms so many people to be like all or nothing. And so I think the way, if you're an all or nothing person, great, you know, and there's tag services like TWA that allow you to, you know, put in for every state and they actually cover the costs and things like that. So there are services that help you with that. If you're like, I have to put in for every state tomorrow. But I think if you want to learn it on your own, I think the best way is to kind of just go state by state and start there.
Right.
You know, maybe. And once you get one, it's very, very easy. Like the next year, maybe you add 2. And then the next year, you're like, okay, I get it. You know, this makes sense. Add 5. So that's always my tip with it, is because it does get very overwhelming. But there's so many great opportunities for over-the-counter type stuff. I mean, there's over-the-counter in Oregon. You guys could come to Oregon hunt every single year. And there's 350 bulls and 200-inch bucks in a lot of the over-counter units in Oregon.
Wow.
And same with Idaho. There's some great bulls. There's 320 class bulls in a lot of units in Idaho. And same with 200-inch bucks.
Kelly and I are looking at each other right now thinking, maybe we should come down to Oregon.
And I've never been to Oregon, but Oregon doesn't seem to come up as one of the big states, right? And for that reason, I'd like to come down and just hunt Oregon. Because you hear about Idaho, you hear about Montana, Wyoming, and all these places. But yeah, Oregon would... and Oregon seems a little more BC, like it's Pacific Northwest, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I mean, there's kind of like 2 sides to it. So there's, you know, we have the west side and the east side, and they're very, very different because the west side's, you know, the Roosevelts and blacktails and rainforest and thick jungle. And then the east side is it can be very, very arid desert and, you know, sagebrush bulls, like bulls that live in the flattest country you've ever seen in your life. And you wouldn't think elk could even hide in it. And there'll be like one little roll in there and there's monster bulls out in the flats, but it's just not what you would think of as elk country.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to start branching out.
That's a great option. I mean, then, you know, I think Oregon's a great option for you guys. Just, there can be similar territory. And then, you know, there's Idaho as well, I think is a good option. I think Montana is one of the most underrated states there is.
Yeah, I'd love to check Montana out. I'd like to go to Wyoming and do the antelope. Yeah. Just to say that we hunted antelope. And I want to taste them too. Like I want to bring some meat home. Man. Yeah.
So good. One of my favorites definitely is the antelope. But you can do, I mean, like Montana, you can go and the bow hunt is pretty easy to, I mean, it's pretty easy to draw their bow hunt. I mean, Wyoming is definitely the state to go if you want to shoot an antelope, because you can shoot multiple antelope, especially if you're just looking for meat. You can there's units where you can take, don't quote me, but I think it's up to like five does or something like that.
It's crazy.
So yeah, it's a pretty easy hunt, but then it's like, how do you define your hunt? Are you just going for meat harvest, or are you going for the adventure? And so there's some really fun hunts. Like, I mean, I've done spot and stock with a bow in Montana. That's just a blast. Just sneaking up on antelope with my bow.
Wow.
And you can do that in Wyoming too.
Nice.
And there's like really cool. I mean, you could go, visit Jackson Hole and hang out there for a couple of days, and drop the wives off and head out in the desert for a little bit. So there's like things you add to these hunts,
Right.
and they really kind of round out the whole trip, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, I like the way you think. Get some ideas here.
Yeah, we might have to stay in touch, and then we can.
It's all
get
about
some
learning
tips.
how to justify it to your significant other.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly,
yeah. We talk about this a lot. Like, oh no, you want to go to Spain, babe? Yeah, we're gonna go to Spain.
It's funny.
some hunting there.
My wife actually brought up going to New Zealand. She's like, "Yeah, we could go and you can hunt." I'm like, "Well, I never saw that coming." It's interesting that she's kind of coming around to these sorts of things. So it's pretty cool. But
Hawaii's another one. Like, and that's coming up like this time of year. Like, Hawaii is a great option. Because you can. And I don't want to give too much away here because I don't want to ruin my own stuff. But you can definitely go to Hawaii, leave your spouse on the beach, and maybe go to a different island and do some hunting, or same island. There's definitely a lot of options in Hawaii,
Nice.
And super cheap, super cheap.
wow.
Like way cheaper than you would think.
Yeah, I spent 4 months in Hawaii when I was 18 or something like that. So it feels like kind of a home away from home. But of course, at that point, hunting was not even in my mind. But it would be cool to go back there and do so. It's funny because I've only recently heard about all the hunting opportunities in Hawaii. And while I was there, I didn't even know that stuff even existed there. So it would be cool.
Yeah, don't you wish you knew about that? You could have
Yeah.
just bow hunted all the time.
Go back in
Exactly.
time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I got buddies that have lived there. They were working there, and they're like talking about how bored they were. And I'm like, oh my god, there's so much hunting to do year round.
What's the species of deer they have? It's like
Axis deer.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
I recently, it was Remy solo hunter
Right.
episode I watched,
Huh.
where he's hunting in all the lava rock and stuff like that. It's
Yep.
pretty cool.
yeah. There's some great opportunities, and like February, March is a great time frame to do that. So
See, that solves the winter problem.
Yeah.
exactly,
It's
Get
funny,
out-
man.
get out there.
You look at hunting as a fall activity, but once you get into it, you realize it's almost a year-round activity, depending on what you're going for, right?
If you throw fishing in there.
Yeah, and fishing, and then if we get into bear hunting and stuff like that, and we could hunt rabbits almost all year. Pretty much August is like the only season that you can't hunt in British Columbia. There's always something though. So
Well, you can. I mean, there's caribou in Alaska. There's
yeah,
fall bear. Like Oregon's bear season starts in August. A lot of guys are still hunting bears, but I'm pretty stuck into like either scouting for elk in August,
right.
kind of finalizing everything. And I hate to like spend too much time in the summer doing any hunting, because the more you do in August, the more it creeps into your time off in September.
Right.
Or, issues or things back up, time off, stuff like that. So I try not to do anything in August and just work super hard. So then I can take September and not, nothing's too bad's going to happen.
Right.
Feel guilty for taking time off. So, that's kind of always my strategy, but it depends on what your job is and things like that.
Yeah, luckily for us, like we've got the spring bear hunt, which starts in March, right?
Yep. I
Yeah,
think so.
March. So we kind of look at that as we tried last year and didn't really have any luck, but that alone is just a great scouting opportunity. So we'll be out there doing that again. And I applied for a limited entry draw for a grizzly bear. So we'll see if that one happens. That'll be interesting. Still have some more research to do on that whole topic, but
You gonna
Yes.
do the grizzly bear with your bow or the rifle?
with a rifle, yeah.
Yeah, bow. Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, this won't be a coastal grizzly bear, right?
Yeah,
this will
this
be
is
interior.
Interior. Yeah.
And what we've heard is that it's just like a black bear in terms of food. So,
Have you
What do you-
done much bear hunting or?
yeah.
Oh yeah, I love bear hunting.
Oh,
It's
cool.
one of my favorites. So spring bear, definitely, high on my list all the time. But so what's your guys is fall black bears for non-resident? Is it still a draw, or is it over the counter, or what's like if a guy like me from the States want to come to Canada and do some hunting, what would it look like?
I believe black bear. Well, for us,
guided.
black bear's over the counter.
It is for non-resident as well, but I think you have to hire a guide.
Yeah. So if you were our brother,
Yeah.
I
We could be brothers.
I think we could bring you up, do the permit to a company and all that kind of stuff. I think where it gets complicated is if you're a non-resident alien and you're not related to the person that you're going to be coming up to hunt with. I think that's where guides come in, but I'm not 100% sure.
Maybe we should get our guiding license, Cal, and then we can bring guys up. I think it'd be worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it always comes up in your podcast.
It
Everyone
does,
wants to
yeah.
hunt in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can't remember. Actually, I see if I can bring it up here quickly with the regulations, but I was going to see what it costs for a non-resident hunter to come up.
Mm-hmm.
I won't kill too much time with it here, but
Yeah.
Well, while
and
you're looking, you guys could come to Oregon because we have like a first come first serve. I believe it's our Southwest additional. Someone could correct me on this, but I believe you guys could come to Oregon and hunt black bears. It's another
Nice.
adventure, and that's like on the coast.
nice.
It's a fun hunt, a lot of bears. So,
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the bear's down and then that whole process afterwards? Because I know a lot of guys
like meat processing.
Yeah, like just field dressing, and it's a lot more work than a deer, right? It's a lot. I've heard, a lot of guys gave up bear hunting after a while because it was just they didn't want to deal with that.
It is a kind of a greasy mess, but
Yeah.
our strategy is, and like we've heard it talked about a lot, is that get all the fat off, because the fat is what basically ruins the meat. And so you're basically getting hide off as fast as you can, getting all the fat off, literally trim all the fat off of it, and we'll keep a good chunk of fat if we can, or if it has enough to render down. And then from there, it's virtually the same. But the only difference is that I get all the fat off, so it's not going to ruin that meat, and get it cooled down, quickly. It's not like something you should let hang around outside very long.
Right. It's like I read an article that said it was like a jug of milk outside. Just pretend it's a jug of milk. That's how fast you want to get it out of there.
Yeah. So
Yeah, exactly.
so black bear over the counter for non-BC resident. Not sure if this applies for Americans, but it's $180 basically for a black bear. So it's not for
But
us.
we have to be guided, so it's,
it becomes a pretty
So then that's when the costs add up.
exactly.
Yeah.
For us, it's only $20.
So if Mike and I were going to come down to Oregon, we wouldn't have to be guided.
no.
Oh wow.
Interesting.
No. A lot of Oregon is draw, but we do have some it's not draw, but it's first come for. It's not over the counter, but it's first come first serve. So it's kind of a timing issue. You'd have to like jump on it. There's like 4,400 tags, and they go pretty quickly. It's
Okay.
like this one unit. But Idaho. Say you want to go to Idaho, that's over the counter, and you wouldn't have to be guided on that one. So you could come down and do some hunting. And then they do baiting, and they do there's areas you can do some really awesome spot and stock type hunting, or you can try to do baiting. The problem with baiting is if you don't live in the area, it's very tough to regularly keep a bait pile.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of work in bringing bait piles out.
Yeah, it's a lot more work than people think. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're baiting." It's just like shooting fish out of a barrel, but it's not. It's a lot of work that goes into it. And so you see all these hunting videos where guys, bait bears, even in Canada, they where they bait bears, and these bears are just coming in super easy. Well, there's a lot of work that goes into that to
that
make
you don't
that happen.
see. Yeah, for sure.
And there's
Yeah.
some advantages to that too, because you can take the, the boars that should be maybe taken out of those groups.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something people don't realize as well.
Alberta.
Well, the other thing is there's areas where there's no possible way that you could kill enough bears or control the population without baiting, because there's areas where you can't spot and stock. It's just thick cover, flat ground. There's just spot and stock isn't going to happen.
Yeah, we're in BC. You're not allowed to bait, but Alberta, which is the next province over to the east, you're allowed to bait there. But for that reason is because the trees and stuff are so dense that, like you said, spot and stock is almost impossible. So it kind of makes sense in certain areas, that's kind of the only method that's going to work, right? So
yeah, like in Northeast, in the U.S., like in the Northeast corner, that area is just so thick and so flat. You couldn't control the population whatsoever if you didn't have baiting. It's just not.
Right.
It's not feasible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny at a glance, people from the outside would look at baiting as, unethical or something like that. But once you start really learning about why these things are
The way they are.
exactly, then it all starts to make sense. It's really interesting, man.
Well, it's so funny when these like anti-hunters or non-hunters argue with bear biologists. Like, this is what this person is trained to. You don't go in there and argue with your plumber about how to install something. Well, you may, but like, like you don't argue with the surgeon about how he should do his job.
Yeah.
It's just that's what they're trained to do, and that's what they're good at. And so like the way they choose to manage a population, maybe the bear biologist knows something that you don't. And so it just always kills me that, non-hunters or anti-hunters, I should say, argue and up in arms about how to manage something they don't know anything about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, man. You see these arguments all over the place. Grizzly bear is a big one in BC right now. And these guys are arguing like crazy, but it just, what they're saying doesn't really hold any water. It's just, I get why they love these bears, and they're pretty amazing species, but they just don't understand the big picture. So
yeah.
Yeah,
is anti-hunters as big of an issue in Canada as it is in the U.S.?
With certain species, I think. And like I said, the grizzly bear is a big one. Wolves are another one. Yeah. I think those are the two main ones.
Grizzly and wolves, I think, are the big ones.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, how many of those people think about ants and bees, right? Like, if those animals died, like, bees are actually going through a bit of an issue right now, right? Honeybees.
Especially honeybees, yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. And up in BC, grizzly bear aren't endangered.
No.
So, and I know we mentioned this before, but Steve Ranella wrote an article about grizzly bear in the States, Yellowstone, and the fact that they've recovered and they're still on the endangered list, and they should be taking those animals off so the other animals can get a chance to get the treatment. But people don't want to take them off because they're cute and furry, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So, yeah.
But no one really likes honeybees, but yet they have, on big picture, they have a lot bigger effect.
Yeah.
Whether we save the honeybees or not.
Exactly.
Than a freaking grizzly bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
It is, yeah. We've almost eaten up an hour of your time, Cody.
That's all right.
What do you got planned for 2017?
Man, everything. Someone asked me this the other day, and I was like, I feel like I should probably think about this. It's like you don't have plans, and then bam, there's way too many hunts to fill in the time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of already the case. I'm trying to burn some deer points in Oregon. And so that's going to do some stuff, going to add a hunt. So right now it's kind of looking like 2 elk hunts in September. I really wanted to go to Alaska this year. And so I'm trying to map out whether that's a caribou in August, blacktail in October. It's tough for me to get a moose hunt because I'm doing an early season elk hunt, but I don't want to give up my late season elk hunt. So it's always tough for me to go to Alaska and do a moose hunt because I have to give up, prime elk time. So
right.
I still haven't decided if I'm going to go to Alaska for caribou or for blacktail, or if bag the whole thing. I really don't want to do that, but already it's 2 elk hunts in September. October has a deer hunt and an antelope hunt, and November has a possible, or I guess late October has an elk hunt too. So there's 3 hunts in October. So you can already see, November has a hunt. So it's like, I try not to have more than 2 hunts per month because I know how hectic that gets. And even 1 hunt per month is, kind of ideal. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the schedule right now. I guess nothing in December, but I'm sure that will change before that happens. How about you guys? What do you guys got going on?
Well, the grizzly bear, I'll find out if we got the draw within the next month here. So that would be probably May or June.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think we're still sort of planning. We're probably going to go back to the same area where we got our elk. That would be October. Mm-hmm. We'll do our usual mule deer hunt here in the Okanagan.
But is that elk hunt going to be an elk hunt or a mountain goat hunt?
I don't know. I guess the thing is, now we know that there's like 2 options. We can go after mountain goat, or we can focus our efforts lower down if it snows and go
Yeah.
for elk. So
We'll see what happens.
yeah. So
You
and
guys
then
got to do an elk hunt in September, though.
yeah, I think we'll get the bows out for September and try that out.
Yeah, that's the thing. The first 2 weeks of September, I want to get the bows out. It's just hard. I don't know why, but that area that I have a wedding anniversary in that first week too. So
That's your own fault.
That's
Here's the
terrible.
here's the thing. I got married before I started hunting, but you know what they say, right?
better,
Never
yeah.
get married in September.
One of my buddies, he's that way, and he got married September 15th, and it has been like not a nightmare, but it's definitely been problematic. We're actually, I just found this video the other day, but we were in Alaska, and it was kind of a big deal for him to be gone over his anniversary. So we had bought the sat phone, rented the sat phone, and he pre-bought minutes because he's like, I have to call my wife on the anniversary. Like,
Yeah.
it's not gonna not happen. Well, no, whoever we rented the phone from didn't activate the minutes. So
no.
we were sat phoneless on his anniversary. And of course, that's when we found out. And we were supposed to use the sat phone to call on a plane. And so we videoed it. He's like, you have to video this. He's like, babe, on the video, babe, I swear to God, the sat phone is not working. I tried to call you.
Nice.
So we give him a lot of crap for getting married on September 15th.
Yeah.
But that was before he was a bow hunter.
Right.
So
Yeah, mine's Labor Day weekend, so that's a long weekend up in Canada or in BC.
Yeah.
So
Can't you like
September
renew your
4th.
vows and switch the date or something?
Actually, mine might be on the early side anyways. Like I think more up to 9th, 10th of September is better hunting anyways.
yeah.
I'm just justifying this. But yeah, mine's early, like first
Well,
4
the
days.
renewing your vow thing doesn't work because he tried that and it just gives you 2 anniversaries. So
Oh, you can't do that.
Don't go that route.
Okay,
Brutal.
good to know.
Do it on the same day is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. We're obviously huge fans of yours, so this has been great. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, awesome, man. It was fun. Like I said, I listen to yours and love listening to it and enjoy it. So keep doing what you're doing, guys.
Cool. Yeah, likewise, man.
Thanks.
And keep in touch if you're ever up this way. You're welcome to join us on a hunt.
Yeah. Well, we might also touch base with you about some shows that come up in maybe 2018 and
Yeah.
maybe a
we'll
black
have
bear
to touch
hunter. We'll get some tips from you anyway.
Yeah. Let me know. I'm always game.
Cool.
Perfect. All right, man. Take care. We'll keep in touch.
Alrighty, sounds good.
Yeah. Cheers, buddy. Take care. Bye.
Thanks.
Cool. There it is, Cal. Cody Rich
Yeah.
Outdoors podcast.
Awesome conversation.
Yeah, that was awesome. We've been working on lining this one up for a little while now, and it's just a matter of arranging schedules. So glad we finally did it, and hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to his podcast on iTunes, and as we ask you to do for us, leave him a rating and review in there in the Canadian iTunes store. I know lots of Canadians might not have heard it before, so make sure you go check it out. In our we've got our resources link on our website. Rich Outdoors is actually one of the ones that we've had listed as recommended in there. So if you can't find it for some reason, just go to our website. There's links there under the resources tabs under podcast. You can find it there. But big thanks to Cody for hanging out with us for an hour here. That was a lot of fun. And I think Kelly and I are probably planning trips to the States.
Definitely.
That's how it's looking at this point. But
It seems easier for us to go down there than them to come up here.
yeah, for
So
sure.
it's something to think about on whoever you are, but
Very interesting.
yeah.
A lot of opportunities. So yeah, we were going to go through a couple more emails and go through some of our reviews, but we'll save that for our next podcast. And hopefully we're going to get some more consistency this month now that we've got a bit more time. Kelly and I were both traveling and shit, so it was difficult to line these up, but we're back.
Back in black.
Back in black, baby. All right, cool guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.